The burnt egg roll?
Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, it's been a while, man.
Yeah.
I just have been on the podcast grind, man. I've been watching some of your stuff through Instagram, and I've been wanting to talk to you about how you got started and what gave you the idea of doing what you're doing now. But I guess before we get into that, like, how's everything with you though?
Yeah, everything's going pretty good at the moment. Here in New Zealand, you know, the whole coronavirus COVID thing is pretty much, they've kind of wiped it out here. So everything's pretty much normal. It's hard to think, like, when you see stuff on the news, like from the States and stuff, you know, what it's like there, because it's totally different here. It's like everything's just open as normal. You don't see anybody wearing masks. You don't have any like social distancing stuff anymore. So
that's one of the things that I was going to ask you, because over here in the States, we see like stuff that's going on in the world, and New Zealand is one of the places that definitely have a lower coronavirus cases versus other countries around the world, even in America. So I was going to ask you, like, what do you think New Zealand did right that America didn't do right?
So if we rewind back to like March, you know, and you can kind of see it starting in like China and stuff. And then they started to get a few cases in New Zealand. It was kind of a day by day. They were announcing how many cases they got each day. So there's only 5 million people in New Zealand, right? And they have kind of like a national news. They don't really have like kind of city news agencies like in the States, you know, like LA's got their own news, St. Louis has got their own news. So they basically are reporting all the new cases in the country every day. And it was kind of going like from, you know, 5 new cases to 20 new cases to 50 to 100 a day. And that's when they said the borders are closing. Then they went into like immediately, like they put in these levels. So they got level 1 is basically like normal. Level 2 is like some precautions. Level 3 is pretty much a lockdown, except for a few things. And then level 4 was like full lockdown. Only essential workers could, you know, leave your house. Only things that were open were pharmacies, gas stations, and supermarkets.
Did that kind of affect your business as well?
Yeah, because so where I'm at is a place called Queenstown. It's down on the bottom of the South Island. Beautiful place, mountains, lakes. Anybody that's listening, or you are familiar with like Colorado or probably like Northern California, Oregon, places like that. Very similar kind of landscape, but just like a lot less people. It's a huge tourist area, and tons of like adventure sports, bungee jumping, skydiving, mountain biking, all that stuff. And when they closed the borders, basically that was my income from the jewelry stuff, basically taking like a 90% hit from there. And because I sell like at a market there, which is basically a tourist market, and there's no tourists coming in, the market was closed. And yeah, so that was that for since kind of end of March.
So I'm assuming that now it probably picked up some, since March.
Yeah. So it's opened back up. It's been open for a couple end of July. It opened back up. However, it's only domestic tourists that are here. So there's no international tourists coming in at all still. The only people who are allowed back in the country are if you're a permanent resident or a citizen. And then they have like managed isolation facilities. So basically you got to stay in a hotel for 2 weeks until you're proven that you don't have COVID.
Yeah.
So you are getting more tourists, but they're kind of domestic tourists. And, you know, they're not going to go out and spend stuff on like souvenirs type stuff or like jewelry type stuff as much as like someone who's coming in who's going to be buying stuff because they're on holiday, you know, they're on vacation.
Got you. Since business has probably been down, like, what have you been doing to fill your time up?
One is kind of focusing more online, and also two, just kind of taking a bit of a break, even stepping back a little bit, not spending as much time in the workshop, focusing on other stuff. So when was it? The start of June, I did this challenge at my gym. It was a body transformation challenge. I think there's about 30 people in it from the gym who did it. And so it was a 12-week kind of contest, and the winner who did the best won $500. I was in the gym basically 6 nights a week. I was playing basketball. Like, we had practice on Sunday nights, and then our games were Tuesday nights. So I was doing basketball quite a bit. Yeah, it was kind of a nice break from the jewelry because I could just focus on, you know, going to the gym and stuff.
You know, as we get older, it's harder to keep up with the people around us that we grew up with. But
yeah.
I would check up on whatever you're posting throughout the years, right? And there was a point that you were playing professional rugby. Am I correct?
Yeah. So as more semi-professional. So that's why I left the U.S. I was playing in St. Louis. I guess it was probably in college. So I went to Cal State Long Beach first, and then I transferred back to St. Louis, St. Louis U, and because I'm a teacher as well. So in the summers, I went and worked at a summer camp out in Virginia, and a lot of the staff were internationals from like Australia, New Zealand, England, Ireland, places like that, South Africa, and those countries all rugby is pretty huge. So I learned basically, I'd seen it before, but I don't really remember knowing too much about it. But yeah, picked it up a little bit, and when I came back to St. Louis, I found that they had some rugby teams there. Joined one, and it came pretty natural to me. So I was pretty decent, I guess.
You have a pretty solid build, you know, you have the height and you have some strength. So I'm not too familiar with rugby, but from what I see, it's a pretty brutal sport.
There's no pads really. I wore headgear, but it's basically just kind of like a little foam about maybe a half-inch thick, like a helmet. And that's basically because like in one of the positions called a scrum, and that's when the two teams kind of line up together head and head. And there's a front row. Those are like the real big guys. I'm in the front row. And then there's a second row, which is like the taller guys. And the second rows, they put their head. So if that finger is my head, and this is like the guy in front of me and the guys next to them, you put your head between like the two guys and you reach out between their legs and you grab their shorts.
No homo.
You're all packed in. So when you're in there, it's like squeezing your head. And so when you see that, you can see like the guys that do like UFC and stuff, you know, they get the cauliflower ears. Same thing happens in rugby because you're getting your ears all smashed in. So that's why you wear the headgear. It's not really for protection like American football. But yeah, it's all full contact. The tackles and the hitting are more you have to wrap up. So you don't really get these huge like kind of smashes like you do in American football, or you can't hit them in the back. So you can only tackle from the front or side, but it's more of a, wrapped up tackle, more safe, but it is still pretty rough.
Did you have any type of like major injuries while you were playing?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I tore my meniscus in my knee, broke some fingers, broke my wrist. And that was the only major ones, really. I guess I was kind of lucky. You see, I don't know if you can see that. See that finger there? That's as straight as it gets. So that's basically breaking it and just taping it up to the next one instead of like proper splinting it.
How long were you playing semi-professional for?
When was that? 2008 when I left the U.S. to go over to the U.K. And I played from about 2008 there until probably 2011.
Oh, okay. So a few years then.
Yeah, a few years. And then I was getting up there because I started quite late. I was in my 20s when I first started playing. And I played in St. Louis for about 4 years, I guess, maybe something like that. That's where I met my wife, and she's from New Zealand. And then we got married down in Mexico. Then, when she got pregnant with twins. And then that's when we moved here. We've been here for just over 7 years now.
Oh, okay. So she's originally from New Zealand, but you met her out in the UK.
Yep.
Got you. What was your time like in Long Beach, and what was your thought process, I guess, in going to Cal State Long Beach? If I remember, I know you were always a big Sublime fan, right?
Yeah. So basically, I had a good friend that he went to Collinsville High School, and he moved out to San Diego.
Was it Skip Johnston or Wayne?
No.
Not them.
I'm still friends with Skip and Wayne, though.
Yeah.
His name was Tom, and so he was a year older than me, but his brother's in the Navy in San Diego, so he moved out to go to school and live with his brother. And I'd been out a few times to visit. My grandma lived in San Francisco for a long time, so I've been to California a ton and loved it. And I was like, I just wanted to get out of St. Louis and Collinsville, basically the furthest I could get away. And you get people saying, "Oh, you're not going to go out there. You'll be back soon." Blah blah blah. That's why I prove them wrong. I was like, "No, I want to go." I worked with a few record labels, so I was a rep for Sublime's record label, Skunk Records, back in St. Louis, like last couple years of high school, and a few other record labels. Yeah, so Sublime's from Long Beach. When I was moving out there, I got in touch with the record label. I said, "Oh, look, do you guys have any, internships or anything?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, we do actually. Come on out when you get here." And I did. Basically, I went down to their office and just had a little interview, and they're like, "Sweet, yep, you can be the new intern." So I was like, "Yeah, awesome."
What type of stuff were they making you do there, man?
It wasn't too crazy, really. So basically, I was in charge of kind of all the reps, all the street reps, kind of west of the Mississippi. When was that? 99. So it was kind of right at the early start of the internet, really. Internet's pretty fresh. And
right.
So I had what they called street reps. And I don't know if they still do that now or not, but basically they'd send you like packages, and you go out and like hang up posters and, go to record stores and give out samples and things like that. So that was my job, was to take care of like those guys, put together the packages, send them all out, keep in contact with them, making sure they're, doing what they're supposed to with the stuff. They made all their own merch, like all their own t-shirts and stuff there. So I would pack orders for that.
So that was kind of, I guess, where you were kind of learning like entrepreneurial stuff, right?
Yeah, I guess so. My jobs before that, I was a baseball umpire when I was like 16 in Collinsville, and then also working at Dairy Queen.
Yeah,
those are my jobs. So I know nothing about like entrepreneurship or besides like the small business, like little businesses we started with a kid, like lawn cutting, and stuff like that. But as far as like marketing and promoting, and I never actually thought about that till you mentioned that. But yeah, it was kind of a start in learning all that stuff. Even though those methods, I don't even know how much they're really used now, now with the internet, if record companies even have street reps and stuff that do things like that. Because I wasn't paid the first semester I did it. I got paid in like merchandise and like going to concerts for free. And because all the guys were older, like I was going to all these bars and things. That's where the shows were. And I'm loading the gear for the band. So you just go through the back doors and you don't get carded or anything. So yeah, it was awesome. I was living the dream as an 18-year-old, like.
Yeah, you must have saw some crazy stuff in Long Beach back then, huh?
Yeah, it was a good time. I was only there a year, but after I'll say I was an intern for about a semester. Hired me on to do more stuff, and that was pretty cool. I was doing basically the same stuff except for I was getting paid for it. My freshman year, so my first year at university, was the biggest like kind of freshman class that they've ever had, and so they didn't really have enough housing for everybody. And so I lived in an apartment with just like a couple guys that we met like randomly when we went out for like a visit, during the summer before we started. But I didn't really get to know that many people besides people that I worked with and a couple guys from like classes that I took. But I was like, okay, for the second year, I'd go back if I could get in like the dormitories in the dorms. And so they did like a kind of a draw, and they said, okay, if you're in the first draw, you definitely get a room, for next year. If you're in the second draw, you're on like a waiting list. And if you're in the third draw, you basically don't have a chance. And I was in the third draw. So I was like, well, I wanted to live that experience of the dorm life, And so my mom worked at St. Louis University, and so I could go there basically tuition free.
Yeah, I remember that.
Room and board. Yeah, paid for room and board. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And to be honest, like I didn't really go to classes too often in Long Beach. What the Southern California weather's like, and you get a sunny day and it's like 75, 80 degrees in the middle of winter, and it's like 0 degrees in St. Louis. I'm like, man, I'm going to the beach. I'm not going to class. And yeah, I remember I came back to St. Louis for spring break. When I went back to Long Beach, I took my own spring break and just had a week of like chilling out on the beach every day, just skip classes. So I didn't really take school that seriously. And then so that's why I knew that I'd probably still be in school now if I stayed there.
It's tough when you're that young at that age, like 18, and then you're on your own and you have all this freedom that you never had before.
Yeah, definitely was a wake-up call. I don't know if it's good or bad, but there was literally an In-N-Out burger like about 200 meters from my apartment, because I frequented there quite a bit. You got to do everything on your own. And, I had a little bit of that, kind of like my last year of school, high school and stuff, but still living at home. Your parents do still a lot of stuff for you. But yeah, you're 100% on your own when you're, especially living in an apartment, not even the dorms, because the dorms, they have like cafeterias. In the apartment, you got to cook for yourself, do all your own washing, cleaning, everything.
Yeah, because for me, I went to SIUE, and so I just stayed at my parents' house the whole time I was in college. And so after college, I moved to Korea, and in Korea, that was kind of like my college experience, except I didn't have classes. I just had to go to work, and then after that, I had to decide what to do with my free time, Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest transitions, right, for young kids, is that when they have all this free time and nobody's telling you what to do, it's like, how do I create my own routine or schedule? So that can be challenging, I think, for a lot of people.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, definitely a wake-up call. And like trying to stay motivated to do actual schoolwork too was pretty tough, and didn't have anybody telling you had to study or anything like that, and getting on your case.
But so going back home to St. Louis, did that kind of like help you settle down, because you have, I guess, more of a structure probably in St. Louis, right?
Well, I lived in the dorms at St. Louis, and it was pretty wild then too, because basically I was in my second year of school, and I was coming from California, and you kind of was in these dorms, all these kind of freshmen, and you're this like kind of second year dude that's come from California, worked for Sublime and Long Beach Dub All Stars and stuff, and partying with the bands, and it was pretty cool because
that's a good pickup line.
Yeah. I had already known some tricks of like, one trick we used was, like the mini refrigerators. So I learned this when I was in Long Beach. We did this one time, is that get mini fridge box, put a keg in it, you pack it back up, and then you go and then let the maintenance man let you in and say, oh, yep, I got this mini fridge for my dorm room, and then you wheel in the keg, and you got a keg party in your in your room.
Should we keep that on the record or off the record?
Yeah, you can keep that on the record. Yeah, that was fun.
You were at the dorm in St. Louis, but then your parents, were they still in St. Louis at that time?
Yeah. So they're still in Collinsville.
Even today?
Yeah, they live in North County now, in Florissant. My mom and dad do. My brother's in Maryville, but all the rest of my family are still still in Collinsville, Maryville.
Oh, okay. How is Adam doing, man? That was my good friend back in the day, and I keep up with you more than I do with him, man.
Yeah, well, he's not really much on like Facebook or anything like that. Yeah, but he's doing good. He's married, got a 2-year-old son, Mac, keeps him very busy. And that was kind of his, I think, turning point too of is having a son. That's something he's always wanted. And yeah, he's got a stepson, Parker, who's I think 17 now. But him and Jenny have been together for, since Parker was about 4 or 5. So I'm not sure how many years that is, 12, 13 years, something like that. So a decent amount of time. And
I'll tell you a funny story, man, about me and Adam when we were kids. I was at your parents' house on that was Helen place. Yeah, I used to be at your house all the time, man. And there was a time, man, where I was over there and we were just in his room playing, and then he went to go take a shit, right? And after he came out, he was like, hey Brandon, go in there, man. And so I went in there, and to this day I've never seen a bigger piece of shit literally in the toilet in my life, man. Like, this shit was like this. I was like, did that shit come out of you, man? One of my crazy memories.
That sounds like him. He hasn't really changed that much, really. Still pretty much the same, still a goofball. But yeah, no, in saying that, I was thinking about that, because you used to playing basketball and stuff over at our place, and the driveway and stuff, and hanging out. But I was thinking, like, I was actually thinking this morning when I was preparing, I was like, man, even like some of my friends, I remember you and all your brothers' names, obviously your name, but all your brothers' names too, like that, Alan, Brandon, Clifford, Douglas.
Right.
Like, because I always remembered it was ABCD, wasn't it?
Yep.
But I have friends too that I can't even, like, that I was friends, like, because you're more Adam's friend back in the day. And I got along with Alan because he was, I think, a year younger at Holy Cross. Clifford and Douglas, they were a bit smaller, I remember. Yeah, so it is funny because I was like, man, I can't even remember some of my actual, like, good friends' siblings' names, but I remember all your family. Yeah, and remember your mom and dad from like basketball, coming to basketball games and stuff. So, and I know was Alan, was he in the Air Force? Is that right?
He ended up going to the Merchant Marine Academy. Is weed legal in New Zealand?
It is not at the moment, but we just voted on it a week or two ago. The elections were here. It's on the vote, but it hasn't been released yet if it passed or not. I think it'd be the stupidest thing ever for New Zealand now, especially for people that have
to legalize it. Are you saying?
No. If it doesn't pass, that's the dumbest thing they could have done.
Okay. Got you.
Here's my reason behind it. Is that they've done a really good job with all the coronavirus. They've given businesses, even my small business got like a subsidy, like a wage subsidy, so it can keep money coming in. They've given out millions and millions and millions of dollars to keep things running. And then you get all the people who were saying, oh, where's the money coming from? Blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like, that'd be like kind of the opposite party and the people that are against the party that's in the government at the moment. Look at like places like Illinois, who made like millions in the first day that it was legalized. People are not going to stop using it. They're just not going to be able to control it. And it's going to be a lot of like the gangs and things that still control it all. That's one of my reasons why. 2 is because New Zealand's a huge grower of grapes for like wine and produce wine and beers and things like that. They love drinking wine and beer here. And it's like, okay, so you're for people going out and getting smashed all the time, but you're against someone wanting to have like a joint in their house. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Do they punish people that are caught with weed heavily in New Zealand?
No, I think they're pretty lenient on it. My good friend, he knew some guys that got busted for growing it. And he said the cops just came in and they took all the female plants and left all the males.
That's dirty.
Yeah.
What a dick move.
And the same friend had another guy that he got caught with some at the airport trying to get on a flight, and he just had to fill out like this little paper saying that it was for personal use, and then they took it and that was it. So he didn't get like not even a fine or anything.
What's crazy is you can fly out of LAX now with weed legally if it's under a certain amount. Yeah. I think the medical benefits haven't been fully found out yet completely, and I think that from what I've researched and stuff, because of with everything with like my daughter, I think it'd be a huge disadvantage not to have it for medical use. And it's proven for lots of things, that it's great for epilepsy and stuff like that. Weed has helped me so much in my life, man. When I was coming up in the St. Louis area, I never smoked weed. I did occasionally here and there at some parties, but I wasn't like a consistent smoker. I was more of a drinker. But when I drink, my actions are more impetuous, meaning once I start drinking and get to my level, I'm like, all right, let's go. I've always been that kind of guy. Like, I gotta do something. I need to take some type of action, and drinking just enhances that. But like once I moved to California, and I started smoking weed more on a consistent basis, I realized, man, I like the psychological effect on my brain of weed because it helps me to like slow down time and not be in a rush to do things. I can like prioritize things in my mind better throughout the day.
Yeah, I just find the difference between it, so much more less violent. People get less violent. You don't see people out wrecking stuff when they're, smoking, drunk, they're smashing things.
But I would say this though, there has to be some type of like teachers that teach people how to do it. You know what I mean? Because it took me a while to understand how it affects my mind psychologically through a lot of trial and error. But it was just like when we were young kids experimenting with alcohol, we would sometimes push our limit to see how many we can drink before we black out or whatnot. But like with weed, it's the same thing, right? You have to understand how much you need on a daily basis to function proper. You can smoke too much weed and then just be super unproductive all day.
Yeah.
But if you understand how many milligrams you're taking or how much like say like one bong rip in the morning makes you feel, you can kind of still function and get all your daily tasks done if you prioritize it right in your mind.
Yeah.
I say all that to say that with weed, it's the same thing. People need to experiment with it and then have teachers that tell them, okay, this is the effects it's going to have on your brain if you do X amount. I've had bad experiences with weed in my life where I ate too many edibles or just took too many bong rips and I can't function. I'm just laid out like this, and you don't want to get to that point, if you want to be like a functioning stoner, right?
Fairly soon we'll know if it passed or not. If it doesn't pass, New Zealand's been known for like a pretty progressive country, and I think that would blow that kind of thoughts of our reputation out of the water. If people turn it down, and deny or vote down on the referendum. So
do you know if this is the first time that it's been on the referendum?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I know out here in the States, it's been always the topic of discussion in certain states, but then over time, like it's been turned down, but then over time, they keep bringing it up. And then I think it was 2016, Prop 64 in California made it recreationally legal, and you can have grow up to like 6 plants in your crib legally, and you can drive around with, I think, up to an ounce without being ticketed.
That was pretty close to what the rules are for here. I think it was 2 per person or 4 for like a household. And then I think it was the same thing as like up to an ounce be able to have on you at one time. So
that was the only thing I voted for in my recent memory. That made me go out to vote Prop 64.
There you go.
I don't really get down with these politicians.
Are you voting this time?
What's crazy is that this is one of the most like controversial presidential elections in recent memory. It's one of those ones where I should vote, but at the same time, after like doing research on how the government or how elections work, I was like, man, California is going to be Democratic anyway. When has it not been? What is the political system like in New Zealand now?
So basically they have the prime minister is in the Labour Party, which would be pretty similar to the Democrats. And then there's National, which is be more Republican. The Democrats just had a landslide, or not the Labor. So the prime minister that's been in there, she got reelected by pretty much a landslide. And then there's like the Green Party. I think they came in like 3rd, but there's a few more parties too. So there's like a total of like 20. One is like the New Zealand Cannabis Party. And then there's a bunch of other smaller ones too, but it's mainly the 2 National or Labor Party.
Oh, okay.
So I don't follow too much of it. I'm trying not to let the whole political thing, especially in the States, ruin my life, or make me upset and get, angry and that anxiety and all that stuff.
It's easy to do, right?
It's easy to do. And then, but it's like, and my thought behind that was like, it doesn't really affect me. I just live my day-to-day life. I don't pay attention to the news. I don't watch the regular news. I see the news on the internet. That's about it. And everything's here is still the same, with my life and my family and stuff. So it's like, well, why am I letting that get me upset and stress about it? But then I saw something this morning. It's like, if you put your head in the sand because it doesn't affect you, then that's privilege, So then I was thinking like, oh shit, because maybe these things don't affect me, but they affect other people.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So I was like, well then, if I just say that doesn't affect me, that's very white privilege of me, isn't it? It is. And I saw it today and I was like, now my head's just like, oh, I don't know what to do. Get upset so I voted. I guess that's what they say you can do to help change things. I don't know what else I can do, especially from here. I can't go to any protests or anything like that.
That is a good point. Yeah. I should, instead of looking at it's just to vote for Biden or Trump out here in the States, I should look at it more like what you said. It's more about the local laws, state laws that will benefit people basically, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always new laws that are voted on each election. And so it's good to kind of be aware and then decide, okay, is this something that I want to vote for? Does it move me strongly enough to go out to the polls and vote, right? I guess I would get caught up in the media hype sometimes if you're just watching like mainstream news, or you pay attention to like just the front page of like Yahoo or whatever. You get caught up in the spin of everything. And so it takes people's minds away from, hold on, there are some laws that are important to people. For example, like Uber and Lyfting is a big thing in certain cities and states. And now they're having some controversy about like, should they be independent contractors or hourly employees? So that's Prop 22 that they're voting on out here in the US. And since I used to drive Uber and Lyft through LA, that's something I should be voting on, I feel, because I can understand. But I haven't been in that industry for a while. It's like I felt like it didn't affect my life, so it didn't move me strongly enough to go out to the polls. You know what I mean?
Are you not doing that anymore?
Since around February, March, because of COVID, I stopped driving completely.
Yeah.
But it gave me more time to focus on setting up my podcast, which is what my dream has always been to do for a while. Yeah. So I guess the COVID is kind of like a blessing in disguise, even though it's fucked up a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, 100%. Like we had like a 4-week lockdown here, like what I was telling you about. You could leave your house to go to the supermarket or the gas station, or to go out like on a bike ride or something. You couldn't like be driving around just for fun of it. And I loved it. I didn't have anything to worry about. Didn't have to worry about. Didn't have any like stuff to be doing, except for just hanging out with the family. And I quite liked it. But I was getting paid too. But I know there's people out there that weren't getting paid and lost jobs and stuff like that. I loved it at lockdown. You got to be careful who you say it to, because some people, we have plenty of space here. We live on like 10 acres on a cherry orchard here. And so we had plenty of space to go out and the kids and run around. But imagine someone living like an apartment or something like that. That would suck. 4 weeks not being able to do anything. That's different for someone else than me. So
yeah, as you said, like some people that are cramped up, or they're not used to like being around their family as much. There's people that they're married, but they don't really know their significant other or their kids, right? But the lockdown kind of forced people to be around them more, and in that you get to see like the good and the bad. That's why I guess like suicide rates and like domestic violence rates have gone up in America since the lockdown.
Yeah, I think it was similar here. Like that's what the big thing they're worried about. I don't know if they have many numbers yet, but yeah, they were saying that will be a consequence of it. Just people in the town that we live in that we know have gotten basically split up, like divorced and stuff because of it. Mm-hmm. And you're, like you said, like you live with someone for 4 weeks and you're just like, I hate this person.
Was New Zealand, were they pretty strict about the lockdown law? Because out here in California, they had it, but they weren't very strict like some other like countries around the world.
Yeah, no, they're pretty strict about it. And I think people kind of could see what happened in other places. I think that was when New York was really bad in Italy, and they think like, okay, yeah, this is killing people. Let's be safe. But there were people who were kind of, against it. But yeah, you would get like stopped by the police if you were out driving around. And I think some people who were like essential workers had stickers on their car, like little signs on their car to let people know that that's what they're doing. But I think pretty much most people followed it. There wasn't anybody like out doing it because it infringed on their rights or something. You know what I mean? It's like...
You got a lot of Karens out here in America, man. That,
yeah, exactly.
That are like, fuck, man, that's martial law. And I think that's kind of like where we're at today in America, is that because we have a lot of entitled people in America that don't want to, abide by the law and just like wear masks and not go to parties and stay in their homes. If the policing laws in different cities would have enforced it harder, I think maybe, potentially, probably, I'm thinking that we wouldn't be at where we're at in America, because I think America is like one of the countries that have like a higher rate compared to other countries.
I agree with you. And it's crazy. I remember it was probably back in like April, May, when you had all these kind of militias like going to, the Capitol building or something with their guns and stuff, saying that we're not going to get locked down and stuff. And the police didn't do a damn thing. But then you have like the protesters a few weeks later after the George Floyd thing and all the protests and the rioting. And man, you can even go on the street and protest without getting shot with tear gas, it seems, when you got, these armed militias storming the Capitol buildings, the police not doing a thing. Two different things, I think, that were...
But doesn't that make you wonder, like, why they would not enforce something that would help the country, but then they would let civil unrest go on, So that makes me think, what is the government's ulterior motive?
Yeah.
and letting that happen, you know?
So that's when some of that stuff I was like, man, I just can't watch the news anymore because it just plays with my head too much, I guess.
Yeah. But I think if we like go around to like different cities around the world, if we're just focusing on like the mainstream news or the internet news, even Facebook news, it's such a small scope of what is really going on in the world and even in your own country or state. Like I've talked to people like in Seattle that said, you know, it's only in certain areas because Seattle was really bad. They let people go loot and riot for a long time, and they even made a zone where they made it like, okay, you can do it. We're not even going to send like any type of policing to that area. But if you go to Seattle, like I'm sure like there's certain areas just like in LA that I'm close, but if I never watch news, I wouldn't even know that they were rioting and doing all this in Santa Monica. Like you said, it's easy to like get emotional about certain things that we see on the news, but when we sit back, maybe smoke some weed, we're like, man, it's in only small areas and they're blowing it up. So what is the reason that they're blowing it up? And I guess maybe because it's an election year.
Yeah, you're right. And it's like, that's not going on everywhere. Like people are asking me, oh, what's it like in St. Louis? And I was like, I think it's okay. I haven't seen anything about rioting and stuff there.
Except that the couple that came out of their crib with AKs, right?
Yeah, I saw that. But like, you're like, you know how big St. Louis is. And even same, like you said about LA, like there's places that's just everyday normal life, but then some have the little spot where all the TV cameras are. They're showing that, oh, everything's on fire, it's a riot. Yeah.
And they loop it over and over again.
Yeah.
Is there going to be like a election in New Zealand, or is it on a different schedule than in America?
Yeah, so they do theirs every 3 years. We just had ours like basically you had like 2 weeks so you can go in and vote anytime. Like 2 weeks ago, I guess, is when it finally finished. So that's why we're still waiting on the results of that referendum. It was like a landslide for the prime minister, and Jacinda Ardern is the prime minister, and she got reelected again for another 3 years. But yeah, it's every 3 years for the prime minister and all the major stuff. I think there's other little ones, kind of like there's other smaller elections too, local election things at different every 2 years or every year or something like that.
Do people in New Zealand, do they pay attention to American politics? Or
yeah, no, you do see out of all other countries, you see mostly stuff on like US politics, especially this year, you know, with the election and stuff. I think it's probably that goes with most countries, really. The US is like one of the biggest countries in the world, one of the most powerful as well, and a lot of the things that go on there affect other countries, trade, tourism, stuff like that too. So yeah, a lot of people do kind of pay attention to it. It's a bit random when you get people here like being like Trump 2020, you know, and it's like, you can't vote. What are you talking about? What are you on about?
Trump has been one of our most like controversial presidents, man. Like I think there's like a sense of, at least in America, you either love him or hate him.
Yeah, I've never liked him. Like it's kind of over like lockdown and stuff. We're kind of watching some of these conspiracy theory stuff where they kind of make him out to be this like superhero type of guy. You know, he knows what's going on and he pretends to be dumb, but he's really a genius and stuff and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, I don't know him personally. Only stuff I've ever seen about him is on the news. So it's like, okay, is all this stuff true? What's their agenda? Because you watch two different news sources. You watch CNN and he's horrible, but if you watch Fox News and he's a saint, you know? So it's like, it's hard to know what to think, really. And that's why I kind of had to almost like tune out of it, you know, and not pay attention very much, just because it's like you said, is all this stuff true? You know, what's actually going on? And
one thing I wanted to ask you is, so currently you're making jewelry. Like, how did you get into that process?
All right. So when I was living in London, I had a good friend that they had this jeweler that made their engagement rings and stuff, and before that I knew what a jeweler was, obviously, but the most of the jewelry that I ever knew was from like, you go to like the jewelry shop, you know what I mean? And in meeting this guy, he made my wedding ring, this jeweler. So his name is Antonio. He's an Italian, old school Italian jeweler. He lives in London too. And so some friends of ours used him to make their rings. And I was like, okay, I wanted to make my ring as my wedding ring as well. And so I met up with them and then got to talking to him. And he found out that he taught at a university in London. And so I was like, oh, that'd be quite interesting to learn how to make like rings and stuff like that. He goes, oh yeah, you can take the class, or I do like kind of private tutoring out of my workshop. And I was like, oh yeah, that might be cool. So then so I just started going there kind of Saturday mornings for a couple hours every Saturday, and then did that for about a year. And then started doing my own stuff, and I started selling online on Etsy when I was in the UK at first, gradually kind of building up, you know, like repeat customers and putting stuff online and get my own website and stuff like that. And then just kind of grew from there, really. It was kind of funny because it was one trip back to the U.S., back to St. Louis. And I was telling my grandparents, I was telling them that, that I was doing. And they're like, oh, did you know your great great grandfather and great great uncle, when they first came to the U.S. from Germany, were jewelers? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. So yeah, just a bit random that it came out. They had a couple jewelry shops in St. Louis back in like the early 1900s and stuff.
So it's in your DNA and you didn't even know.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't even know it. So yeah, it came out in me, I guess. But no one else in the family has done anything like that. So yeah, so I've just carried it on. So that was about 9 years I've been doing it now.
Oh, okay. What kind of jewelry are you making now? Like, I've seen your work on Instagram and mostly Instagram, but I guess explain to the people like what type of jewelry you make and I guess how you can get it.
Yeah, so I mainly work in silver. I do work in gold for like custom orders and stuff, just because gold's a bit more of an outlay. It's a lot more expensive just to have, if nobody's buying it at the moment, just being in stock. But yeah, so mainly silver stuff. I make stuff for men and women, and kind of a rustic style that I make, kind of inspired by the outdoors, mountains and kind of forest inspired, and just more of an organic kind of rustic kind of style to it.
But it's made out of real silver?
Yep. So I mainly use sterling silver, which is what most silver jewelry is made out of. I do some stuff in fine silver, which is like 99% silver, but it's a bit softer. So that's why most jewelers use kind of sterling silver, which is 92.5% pure silver, and has some other things to strengthen it.
The fine silver, I'm assuming, is probably more expensive, right?
Just a tad bit more, not too much, because it's only like a 7.5% difference really in the amount of silver that's in it, which isn't much. But it's more gold that when it gets a bit pricier. So you got 9K gold, which is kind of I think that's probably the lowest amount of gold content of it that you would use. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact percentage of gold. But then you got 18% or 18 karat gold, which is like kind of nearly double the amount of gold in it. You get 22 karat and 24 karat. 24 karat's the most carats you can have, but it's quite soft and it's quite yellow, like kind of a darker yellow. So a lot of people don't like that as much as the like 18 or 9K, which is a little more mellow of a yellow. That makes sense. Not just big old orangey yellow.
You do online orders too now, right?
Yep, to my website, which is goldpanpete.com. So you can see my hat there. I got my
Yeah, plug it, man. Hype up your stuff. I'll promote your stuff, and eventually I have to order some stuff because I got to support you, man.
Hey, man. There you go.
You ship internationally?
Yeah, man. Ship all over the world. Mainly, I'd say probably Australia and the US are my biggest countries that I send to. But I've sent quite a few stuff to the UK, some other places in Europe, Mexico, Canada. So yeah, ship all over the world. That's to my website. Like I said, goldpanpete.com. And then, my Instagram is at goldpanpete.
How did you come up with that name?
Yeah. So I got involved with the jeweler when he was making my wedding ring. So like in my wedding ring, I have some gold that I panned myself. So this area, New Zealand, where we live, it was kind of a big gold rush area back in the 1800s. And so still quite a bit of gold, around if you go panning for it. And when I was here visiting before my wife and I got married, I went with her dad out and we gold panned quite a bit because I wanted to find enough to make my whole ring. But I literally only found say my ring was 8 grams total. I found like half a gram of gold. So the rest is silver, and it's got that gold little set in the silver for my ring. So when I came up with the business name, the brand name, I wanted to kind of incorporate that somehow. So I was like, oh, Gold Pan Alex. I was like, oh, it doesn't really rhyme or kind of ring that good, And like I said, I went to Cal State Long Beach, and their mascot's the 49ers, which is from the gold, same as like the San Francisco 49ers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And their mascot's name is Prospector Pete. He's like a little gold miner guy. So I was like, oh yeah, Gold Pan Pete. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I like that. It has a good ring to it, as you said.
Yeah, so it has a better ring than Gold Pan Alex. So yeah. But the amount of people that I get like emailing me saying, oh, hey Pete, calling them Pete, like a bit confusing. But you get a lot of jewelers to be like, oh, Alex Moore Jewelry. And it's like, oh, it's a bit boring, So I was like, yeah, I want to have something that was kind of an actual brand name to it.
I've always been interested and curious about like people that start their own small businesses and make a living off of that. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you and kind of get an idea of your thought process and how you went into making jewelry.
Going back again to when I was living in the UK, and before I started doing jewelry stuff, I read a book by an author called Chris Guillebeau. So he's an American author, and he's written quite a few books now. But one of his earlier ones was called The Art of Nonconformity. I need to read it again because at the time I remember it was an awesome book. I loved it. And it really was about, there's ways out there to make money besides just going doing a 9 to 5 job, basically, right? That's like the norm, isn't it? Right? You're supposed to go to college, get a 9 to 5 job, and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
This book was basically saying you got to go against the status quo. There's ways out there to do that. And so from after reading, I knew that that's something I was really interested in, something I wanted to do. I was teaching, because I teach elementary school as well. So I was in the UK playing rugby, teaching school, and I was getting really burnt out on it. Knew I couldn't do that for another 30 years or more. So I was trying to just rack my brain for things that I could do besides that I was interested in. And I kind of learned a bit more like about the stock market and did a bit of like trading and investing that way. But that was just kind of I didn't know enough to be able to make a living from it type of thing, or to change careers into it. It's kind of cutthroat business too, because that was the thing too. I didn't want to be, working 80-hour weeks, which a lot of those kind of finance type of guys do. That wasn't my style. Yeah. Then the jewelry thing came up, and then I was like, oh yeah, I could run with this. And yeah, once I started learning, and I'm still learning now, and I'm changing my styles up. So I use a bit of I use 3D printing now in my jewelry, and then casting it into the metal from there. But I also still do like the old school methods, like I learned from my tutor, Antonio, where you just take like a piece of metal and you fabricate it all yourself to what you need. So yeah, so that was kind of my mindset for that. And when I found out about the jewelry, then I knew that, yep, I could do that. And it's gradually growing and growing over the last 8 years. So now I was teaching full time here in New Zealand. I was the PE teacher, but I also had my own classroom as well. So I was pretty full on busy with doing 2 separate things at the school. And they asked me, like, what would you really like to do? And I said, I'd really like to just do the PE. And they go, okay, we can do that, but it's only 3 days a week. And I was just like, oh, that we need the money and stuff. But then I was like, yep, that's cool. I'll do it. Because I can always pick up extra days if they need someone to come in to teach a class, like a substitute type thing. So that actually was a life changer for me. It kind of reignited my love of teaching.
Sorry to cut you off. One thing I thought of is something along those lines of what you're talking about right now is, I'll just show you right now because I have it right next to me. This book right here.
Oh, yep.
Have you read this before?
Yeah, I have. I've read that. It was funny because when I was telling you about, when I was here visiting my now in-laws before we got married, and I did the gold panning, I was reading that book here.
Okay.
So that was about so in 2011 or 2012. Yeah, I was reading that book. It all was really awesome, but then I was also because I was a teacher, I was like, I can't really connect how this stuff can help me. You know what I mean? It was about working remotely and stuff like that. And I was like, well, how do I work remotely and teach school? You know what I mean? It's kind of a job where you have to be there pretty much. But I probably could have thought more about it and come up with different ideas to expand on that, like online classes and things like that, or tutoring. And
sometimes it takes courage though to do what you did, as far as telling your job, saying, okay, I know I need the money, but I know I can always pick up more hours if I need to. So going down to 3 days kind of freed up time for you to maybe explore other options or do more research on things. And that's why when you said that, I was thinking about the 4-hour work week, because I had just been reading it the past couple weeks. I thought maybe you either read it or got that idea from that.
Probably was a mix of both, actually. Yeah, I was reading it at the time right before I started the jewelry stuff. So yeah, I definitely think it does have an effect on me as well. And you're right. Yeah, would I've had the courage to go down the part-time teaching if the school hadn't been oh, yep, this is only 3 days a week. You know what I mean? I might still be just doing the full-time thing and hating it. Yeah, so it gave me a lot of time to work on the jewelry and stuff as well, and to build my business up on those days, but also gave me more time to hang out with the kids when because they were in preschool and before they actually started school. So yeah, it got me more time to hang out with them. And today's Friday here, and I'm off today, and my son Bo, he's in watching TV now, but he doesn't go to preschool on Fridays, so we normally have Fridays to chill and stuff. And then he comes to the markets with me on Saturday and kind of just chills and watches cartoons on my phone under my table. He's got a little mattress under there with blankets and a pillow, and yeah, he just chills and comes hangs out with me at the market all day.
And those are the things that money can't buy.
Oh, 100%. And you think, okay, yeah, I'm making less money, but one, I'm doing something that I love to do too, as well. Two, my kind of professional career as a teacher, it's kind of reignited that kind of love for it, because I'm doing what I love to do, and I'm not getting burnt out because I'm teaching PE and teaching a tech class too, which is cool. And then with the family, that's the most important one, is the time with that, because it just flies by. Like our twins, they turned 7 in a couple weeks, and Bo, so my son turns 5 in January, and it's just like, man, I can't believe that time has flown by. And you have people that, you know, are working, they might get to see their kids an hour a day because they're at school, or they go to work till 6 o'clock at night and they get home and the kids go to bed after an hour. So I'm just grateful that I got that time to be able to spend with them and still have that work, I guess, as well. So that was kind of the background of how I got going into the jewelry business and stuff. But yeah, it's always, like I said, I'm constantly learning new stuff and designing new stuff and trying to build the business, and still a lot of things I want to do with it. But my goal is eventually be full-time with it. Eventually, yeah, stop teaching and work for myself. So you got any good sales books that you'd recommend?
That's one of the things. When I turned 30, I started reading a lot more books. Because I was kind of like you. I was like, fuck, I don't want to work for somebody, man. I don't want to conform. Here's a good recommendation. It's not a sales book per se, but it's called The Game, The Secret Society of
Pickup Artists.
Pickup Artists. You know that?
Yeah, I read that.
Because when I was working at 24, that was one of the books that I was reading to help me in my sales. And a lot of picking up women is just sales. You know, you have to create your image, and they call it peacocking, right? Where you have to figure out a way to stand out from all the other Joe Schmoes at the bar.
Yeah.
So that's a good sales book.
I just put in the chat. So I was on another podcast. Well, I wasn't on the podcast, but my story was on the podcast of that guy, Chris Gillibo, who I said he wrote that book that I first read, The Art of Nonconformity. So he's put out quite a few books on like side hustles. My story was on his earlier podcast episodes. So that link I sent you, that's the link to my episode for it. But then also he put out a book, 100 Side Hustles or something like that my story was in the book as well. He's a good author to read for the side hustles and stuff. And like I said, the last one that he's done that I was in, it's 100 of the stories from his podcast that he's kind of put into book form. So yeah, pretty cool. It's a hardcover book and stuff.
Got you.
When I'm in the car and like driving to work, I mainly listen to like podcasts and audiobooks now. Every once in a while music, but a lot less.
I was like that too when I was driving Uber and Lyft. I would listen to music, but it got to a point where I'm like, fuck, the music, it's good, but it's repetitive, the message. Yeah. So it's like, what can I get my brain to think while I'm driving and maybe learn something, right? And so I was listening to a lot of like Joe Rogan's podcast, and he kind of inspired me even more to do a podcast.
I was telling you that through the winter here, so June, July, and August is winter here. It's the opposite of the northern hemisphere. And I did this challenge at my gym, and I lost 15 kilograms, so about 30 something pounds, and went from like 22% body fat to about 16% over those 3 months. Well, I came in second in the contest. I was gutted because I was so strict on my diet and constantly working out and basketball. For like a month after that, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna eat anything I want, you know. And I stopped going to the gym except for like maybe once or twice a week rather than 6 days a week. And then I listened to the David Goggins book. That got me pumped up to get back into the gym and stuff. So that's why I've been back into I go about 3 times a week now. This David Goggins book, man, that really got me motivated. And then I was like just craving like more information from him. You know, the book was so good, and the audiobook's really good because it kind of in between the chapters he talks. So the person who wrote the book is reading it in the audiobook, but then at the end of every chapter, it's kind of like they're doing like a podcast, kind of like this together. So anyway, when it finished, I was like, oh man, I'd love to find out more about this guy and stuff. And then I found he's been on tons of podcasts, and Joe Rogan was the one. And I'd never really listened to Joe Rogan. I've always heard about it, obviously, because he's probably like the #1 podcaster, isn't he? Really, but never really kind of stuck to listen to it. And I listened to this one; it was awesome. And then so I've listened to a few more since then, kind of in talking now about him. You probably know the podcaster Lewis Howes.
I'm not familiar.
He's quite popular. He's based in LA too now, but he's initially from Ohio, but he went to high school in St. Louis. I forget the name of the school, but it was like one of these kind of private schools. And I went to Metro East in high school, and we actually played against the school that he went to. And he was a couple years younger, so I would have played against him when we played them, which is kind of funny. But yeah, he's pretty up there with the podcast now in the podcast world. I think he's been on like the Ellen Show and a bunch of other TV shows and stuff. He's written a couple books. I forget his podcast's actual name. Oh, School of Greatness is his name of the podcast. But anyway, and like we talk about Instagram, the whole situation with my daughter a few years ago. So my daughter, when she was 3, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And that's kind of where I've researched the medicinal cannabis and everything else. And that's where that whole process, that whole stuff came from that I mentioned before. And I just Instagrammed him and I said, look, this is what's happened. You've had all these guests on. What were 2 that would be to help me out? One with like kind of physical, you know, trying to heal her and help her. And 2, for myself and my like mental state. And he wrote back and said, oh, yep, here's these 2 guys that I'm interviewed them, and yeah, get in touch with them. So I did, and yeah, some really crazy stuff. So I messaged this one guy's name's Chris Lee, I think it is, and he's kind of like a motivational kind of spiritual speaker. And I messaged him, and I didn't hear anything back. And then Grace, my daughter, had 2 brain surgeries. The second one was probably like a month after I messaged this guy, and so we went to the hospital, and we were staying at the Ronald McDonald House, which is a walking distance to the hospital where we were at. And we dropped her off, and we were going back to the house, and she was going to have a surgery. She was under. We're going to come back in a few hours when she was finished. And on the walk from the hospital to us going to the Ronald McDonald House, I get a message, and I look at it. It's this guy, Chris Lee, who'd messaged me. It's a month later than when I first messaged him, saying all this stuff about, you just got to believe 100% that she's going to be fine. All these different things to kind of help with my mental state.
That's the universe working right there.
100%. And I've got a whole notebook, no, not a whole notebook, but I've got a list of all these different things that happened during that time period of her journey and our journey, of the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, intervening kind of positively. So yeah, like you said, the power of like Instagram and being able to help people is quite crazy. So yeah. And just to let you know, that was 3.5 years ago now, and she's still doing fine. So like the tumors, like with chemo and stuff, shrunk by over half, and she's been fine ever since. And the type of tumor she has is a benign tumor, just in a bad spot where they can't remove it, but it shrunk and it's not grown since. And knock on wood, it won't grow again. And she's in school and loving it, just like any other kid. So, but yeah, definitely, I think reaching out to like this guy Lewis Howes and him put me in these other guys, that helped me so much. And that's just the craziness of me being able to get in touch with him just by a message on Instagram. So
what you just told me right there, it goes along the lines of what they were talking about in the 4-hour work week. If you reach out to a lot of people, you're going to hear a lot of no's, right? Or they might not get back to you. That shouldn't discourage you from keep trying to reach out to people that you feel like could give you some knowledge or information. Even for me, like with this podcast, like I want to reach out to like Busy Bone eventually, different people that inspired me when I was a kid. And even to this day, I already know you're going to run into some no's and people declining and stuff, but that's part of the game. But that should never stop you from grinding for what you believe in and to keep trying to reach out to more people.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree. Well, Wayne, my friend Wayne, he's living up in Portland, so not too far from you, but he started his own side hustle business as well, doing like t-shirts and things. So he does screen printing, and he does these tie-dye type of t-shirts, the Mystic Fern. So that's his Instagram.
I follow him on Instagram, and
did you? Okay.
I always like his posts to encourage him to keep going. I like Wayne. Wayne, you bring him up, but like I remember being at your house on Helen Place, and I was playing basketball in your driveway with Adam, and he came out, and I think you might have been there, I can't remember, but he was older than us, bigger, stronger, faster, and he balled us up really good. And I was like, damn, I gotta step my game up. So in a way, he kind of inspired me to like try harder in basketball.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's cool.
So you can find inspiration anywhere at all different times of your life.
Are you still playing ball now?
Not too much. I think the last time I really went hard was probably in my early 30s, around 30, 31, when Doug was in California, and he stayed with me for a while, and we were training heavy at LA Fitness, and I got pretty good. Like I was light on my feet, balling. I felt like good on the court, but then age kicks in, and like my knees started to, I thought it was my knees, but I think it was just lack of stretching, because as we get older, our body naturally becomes more tight and stiff, so stretching becomes more of a necessity. But at that age, still 30, 31, my mind was still moving very fast, and I was still very, I guess, not as patient. I was like, man, I don't want to stretch for 20 to 30 minutes before I go play.
Here's my team that I play on, Cromwell Miners. So it's just a men's team here, like the local team that we play in like a league, the next town over. But yeah, it's good. And I played quite a bit in college, like in the rec center all the time, and played with like the guys from like the basketball team, the SLU basketball team would come in, we'd play against them, pick up and stuff, and it was awesome. And then after college, I was more in the rugby then, like I said, like we were talking about before. Since I've been in New Zealand, I've got back into basketball and have been playing the last 3 or 4 years or so. And so my goal for next season when I'm 40, so I turn 40 in March, and so my goal for next season is to be able to dunk it again. I used to in high school, barely in high school I could.
How tall are you now?
I'm probably shrinking some, but yeah, about 6'4", 6'5", between 6'4" and 6'5", depending if I'm standing up straight or not. But I think because I was saying before that I've dropped like 30-something pounds.
So you feel a lot lighter, I'm sure,
A lot
on the
lighter.
court.
Yeah. That's my goal, is to using like these plyometric program. Me and my buddy who I go to the gym with and play with. So we're doing this because that's both of our goals to be able to throw down next season again at 40. So
hey, you can do it, man. I think there was an article I read on Sports Illustrated or some online magazine, but like this white dude that was like I think turning 40, and he's short though. He was like maybe like 5'10", 5'11", and that was his goal, was to dunk at the age of 40. He talked about his process. I can't remember if he ever got to that point of dunking again, but I think he got pretty close. So that tells me that, you know, you have less distance. You're 6'5", so you put in maybe half the work that he put in, and I think you can get it.
Even in like high school, I never, or even up until like the last year or so, I've never really trained with weights, my legs. It's always been upper body, you know, bicep curls and bench press and stuff like that. Never one for like squats and deadlifts and things like that. And we've gotten it going with those the last kind of couple months until I hurt my back last week. But once it's healed up, I'll get back into focusing a lot on legs, and then hopefully, keeping the weight down and keeping up with stretching. I've been doing quite a bit of stretching and stuff. And
yoga is good too at our age.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So I've been doing quite a bit of like stretching and stuff.
That's what's up, man.
It's been awesome to talk to you. But yeah, I'd love to do it again sometime.
Likewise, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and I know this is something that we've been talking about for months, and we finally made it a reality.
It's cool to talk to you again and see a familiar face.
Yeah, man. As long as you keep grinding and never give up, you know, I feel like your brand Gold Pan Pete can become bigger than where it's at already right now.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And with you too. Like I've liked your positive outlook that you got and stuff. So that's awesome. Not many people have that, do they?
It takes time to find it, you know. It's a journey, a spiritual journey through life. And like I said earlier, weed is one of those things that kind of helped me think. You know, just blazing every day, man. I think weed doesn't get enough credit, and I know weed is one of those things that can heal a lot of people's minds, but I feel like it's going to take so long because it has such a negative stigmatism around it. You know, it's still taboo to a lot of people. You know, I think it can open up minds.
Yeah, over time that'll change, I think.
Weed made me more positive. You know, it helped dissolve my ego. I did mushrooms one time, but I want to experiment with like DMT and, let me see, ayahuasca is kind of like a form of DMT. Oh, acid. I've never done acid in my life, but I heard that opens up chambers in your mind.
I've never done that either. No.
Yeah, I still want to go down like some psychedelic journeys in my life. Yeah. Like weed is a good like starter.
Yeah.
But eventually I know there's like a deeper level that my mind can get to, and I can dissolve even more of my ego. But yeah, man, I appreciate it. And
hey, man, Bo. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Want to say hi to Brandon?
I want to watch something on your phone.
Say hi.
What's up, Bo? How you doing, man? I've been hearing a lot of good things about you. What you been up to?
What you been doing?
Nothing.
Nothing. Enjoying the day, huh? How old are you, man?
How old are you?
4.
You're 4 now? Oh, okay. That's a good age, man. I'm trying to go back in time and become a kid again like you.
My name's called Bo.
Your name's Bo? That's a cool name, man. I like that. Are you in school now?
I'm in
preschool, eh? Do you know him and you have the same first letter in your name?
B.
B for Bo, B for Brandon.
That's right.
Only cool guys have B's in their names, right?
And he's not.
I don't have any kids myself, but like I have like family members with kids, and hanging around young kids, it made me realize, man, that's where I want to be. Getting back into that mind state where, you know, you're just free and not worried about the negative stuff in the world.
I want to watch something on your
All right,
phone.
I'm gonna watch something on there. Cool. I'll be out in a minute. Yeah, he's awesome.
I'll let you get on with your day, but like I said, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this with me, and I'll hit you up when I get done editing it, and you know, that way you can see the finished product.
Yeah, man, it's been really good. So I wish you all the best of luck with all the podcasts and everything. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. I'll be keeping up with you on social media.
Cool. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Alex, man. Have a good day.
You too, Brandon. See you, buddy.
All right. Stay blessed, brother.
Thanks, bro.
All
Later.
right. Peace out.
This concludes our danse macabre.